Odagiri. I do lead game UI designer on Final Fantasy 14.
So you've been working in gaming for a long time. Can you talk about some of the tools and technology and how that's improved in your lifetime and how that makes your job easier and what it opens up for you in Final Fantasy 14 Online?
So of course, we would in the past manage our tasks on Excel sheets and things like that. But from that aspect, introduction of new tools such as Redmine was definitely helpful. And with new technologies being introduced and having opportunities to expand on the way we think is definitely helpful. And I think being able to follow the trends in modern times is beneficial so that we can explore how to make our jobs easier. And I think it is good to kind of look into those options.
MMOs are very complex games and you use keyboard or mouse and you also helped with the gamepad design. Like what goes into that? What are some of the challenges you have to overcome in a game with Final Fantasy 14 Online when you're making the controls go from keyboard or mouse to gamepad and making it feel natural and work?
So first and foremost, with a mouse and keyboard, I feel that having your hand movements and what response you get on the screen should be aligned. So with that thinking, it is a bit difficult and it's challenging to kind of reflect that into gamepad because gamepad is more about tiered movements. So you select an action and then it pops up another menu. So it's difficult to kind of align that. So it's a lot of iterating. I would implement certain systems, including the layout, and experiment. Would this be the right way to do it? And then if it doesn't feel right, I would go back and maybe try to tweak it so that it's closer to what you would get from a gamepad movement. But then if you go too far into leaning it towards gamepad, it becomes a bit difficult to manage it on a mouse and keyboard. So trying to find that balance is definitely something that I work on, and it's a constant sort of daily adjustments, making a daily task of mine to adjust these.
When a new expansion's in the works, or new add-ons or new class features get introduced, can you talk about some of the challenges if you have to change the UI based on the new features being added to the game and how you do that and how you approach that?
So with Dawntrail, of course, we were going to raise our level cap to level 100, and that was actually from a UI perspective a big change because everything was written up to 2 digits for the levels, but now it's going into 3 digits. So there were a lot of areas we needed to update our UI because we had to accommodate for the number of digits in the level. So we started pretty early to investigate, okay, which areas do we need to address this? And we tried to find out all of the areas that required it so that by the time we start implementing for patch 7.0 or the new expansion, we would be able to jump right in with the implementation. So that was one thing. And on top of that, yes, with a new expansion package, we do introduce new jobs. So we would have to develop a new job HUD. So we would work together with the job designers to see how we can accommodate for a UI that matches the game design of the new jobs themselves. So we worked really closely with those developers to get that put in there. And another new feature that we introduced is during the battles, pop-ups, like a dialogue would come up during a battle to kind of let the players know what kind of mechanics is going to happen next. We had a similar function that was in the game, but we wanted to make it even more intuitive and clear for the players. So for that one, we worked with the battle team to make sure that we implement that as a system. So everything we tried to get a roll on quickly and early on in the process.
There are third-party add-ons for PC users for Final Fantasy Online. Do you guys look at that sometimes and draw inspiration or see what maybe the community is doing outside of your internal team and take that into account when making changes to the UI?
Long story short, we do look at it and we do reference it sometimes, but then I think first and foremost, we totally understand that with PC gamers, there is a culture of utilizing mods, and I feel that I don't want to sort of exclude those, and I don't want to negate their existence. There are developers that utilize mods in other games as well. So from a functionality perspective, I don't want to like deny their existence. I don't think they're wrong per se. That said, Final Fantasy XIV does have our sort of official stance on the use of mods, only because we are available on not just PC but consoles, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and we want to deliver the same gameplay experience for our players, and I think that is absolutely necessary. So we do see the community utilizing mods, and we are aware of some of these. And when we look at these, from an engineering perspective, we would see, well, this would probably have an undue load on the servers, and so it might not be realistic to implement it as is into Final Fantasy XIV. But we understand that there is a demand for some of these quality of life updates, and so we try to keep our eyes open to those and our ears open to those opinions. For example, most recent example would be how we implemented a system where the job icon would be displayed by the player's nameplate. This was something that players were requesting for quite a long time, but it was a bit tricky to implement it into the system that Final Fantasy XIV has already established. And so we had to find a workaround from our sort of internal and official perspective to implement that into the game. But again, yeah, we understand and we are aware of how the culture is amongst the PC players. And we do want to sort of keep our eyes open, I guess, to be aware of those continuously.
Paint a timeline for us, like how long it takes to implement a change, however simple the community may view it as. Like, how long does it take you from deciding you're going to do this change and then actually making it live in the game?
So it depends on what we want to implement, I think. There are some elements that we may already have a foundation in our system, and so it's just a matter of implementing it. So sometimes when we receive a proposal for a new feature, it might make it in time for the following, like, next patch. Or if it's really being talked about, we can look into, like, days worth of work and be able to implement it. That said, there's also certain elements that require a major overhaul of some systems. So those might take somewhere upwards of half a year to 1 year, even 2 years, because we would have to coordinate with different departments within our development team. So yeah, it depends. And so when we do see a lot of player demands, we do look into it pretty immediately so that we can figure out when we can address this. And we also have to take into consideration our patch schedules. We may not be able to implement it in a minor patch sometimes, so we would have to figure out what is our next major patch update. So that would cause a lag of a few months sometimes, and so we really feel terrible sometimes to make people wait, but yeah, that also has to be taken into consideration.
Talk a little about yourself. What games did you play growing up? What set you on the path to working on Final Fantasy XIV Online? Are you self-taught? Did you go to school? How did you end up becoming a UI designer?
Growing up, I played a lot of games from Square and Enix, and it's interesting because I didn't really have a desire to join the games industry. So school-wise, like college, it was not really about game design, but I did have this desire to enter the field of some kind of entertainment. And at the time, Square Enix just recently merged together, and then there was a team called Play Online that was starting up, and so I joined there. But I'm afraid I left the company for a little bit due to some reasons, and I started working on UI-related work in another company, also for an online game, though. And so I did that, and then Final Fantasy XIV was going to be overhauled as A Realm Reborn, and that's when the want ad for the UI designers came up. And so that's when I decided, okay, I want to apply for this job. And with video game jobs, even looking at game designer, you have different facets of it. Battle designers, scenario, event designers, your typical level designers, UI designers. There are many different options. And when I was faced with that question of what do I really want to do, I was very interested in working in UI and the different systems within a game, and I felt that the job that I do now matches me very well. So I've kind of stuck with this UI development, and here I am. One more thing though, with Japanese game development, when you look at game design, I feel that UI designers are not as popular in Japan, and so I would love for more people to become interested in building the system side of UIs. I see that many development teams have the UI artist and the system designer be the same person, or like it becoming the same sort of department. So I would love to see a more specialized sort of UI system designer, and I feel that it's still kind of lacking in that sort of diversification.
What do you think is the biggest misconception when you tell family and friends that you're a UI designer in video games? Like, what do they think you do? Like, just what's a big misconception for that job title and his job?
UI designer is typically expressed as UI planner. So when I say UI designer, people make the misconception that I am some kind of artist. And so they would think, oh, you're a UI artist. So, well, are you able to draw? And so I'm like, no. And I show them an example of my poorly drawn drawing, and they'd be like, oh.